Remember when a film about friendship, fried food, and a small southern town made you cry without ever explaining why? A story told in layers, an old woman in a nursing home, and a younger one who needed to hear something true. A cafe by the railroad tracks, a friendship so close that 30 years later, audiences are still arguing about what it actually was. Kathy Bates as the woman who rammed a car in a parking lot and finally started living. Jessica Tandy, who had just won the Oscar, telling stories she had kept for 60 years. A real town that was nearly dead before this film arrived. A stunt double walked off the set, and the actress covered herself in live bees. Extras were poisoned by the wrong tomatoes. The studio opened the film in 5 theaters. And the love story the book was built on was never allowed to have its name. Fried Green Tomatoes, 1991. 16 facts, including the one that audiences are still arguing about 33 years later. Fact 1. The original co-screenwriter wrote the script as a musical. She died before the film was released. Avnet hired Carol Sobieski to adapt the novel. She wrote it as a musical. Avnet rejected it. Flagg tried her own adaptation. That didn't work either. Avnet spent 3 years rewriting it himself. Sobieski received co-writing credit alongside Flagg. She died in November 1990, 13 months before the release. The screenplay was nominated for an Academy Award. She never knew. Fact 2. Kathy Bates had just won the Oscar for Misery. On the Fried Green Tomatoes set, she thought she was failing. Bates arrived on set and found she couldn't calibrate. She second-guessed every choice. She didn't know how to translate Oscar winner confidence into a meek housewife finding her voice for the first time. She later described it as a complete breakdown of professional self-awareness. The British Academy nominated her for Best Supporting Actress. Imposter syndrome, it turns out, does not care about your Oscar. Fact 3. Avnet wrote the film with Jessica Tandy in mind. Tandy was 82 when they filmed. She already knew she had cancer. Avnet sent her the script, and she said yes immediately. During the shoot, she worked every day. She was nominated for a second Oscar for this film. She died in 1994, aged 85. She spent her final working years playing a woman who told stories. That turned out to be exactly right. Fact 4. In Fanny Flagg's novel, Iggy and Ruth are in love. 3 of the 4 lead actresses wanted to show it. The director and producer said no. The book is explicit. Parker in 2008. I really tried to push it at the time, and they didn't want to go there with me. Mary Stewart did. Fanny Flagg did. But not the director, not the producer. Nobody else. The 2 actresses played the subtext in every glance and every touch. The Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation gave the film an award for Best Lesbian Content. The studio received a prize for the representation they had worked to prevent. Fact 5. Fanny Flagg appears in the film. She plays a women's empowerment workshop teacher trying to help wives save their marriages. Flagg, who wrote a novel about women finding strength through each other, plays a perky instructor teaching women how to reignite their marriages. Evelyn goes to that workshop looking for answers about how to be a better wife. She leaves unsatisfied. Then she meets Ninny. Flagg is in the scene that represents everything her own story dismantles. She plays the wrong answer. Fact 6. The stunt double walked off the set when she heard what the bee scene required. Mary Stuart Masterson volunteered. Masterson put on a shirt treated with queen bee pheromone and became a giant bee magnet. 6 takes covered in thousands of bees. The bee wrangler eventually shouted at her to run. She sprinted to a car, stripped off the shirt, drove away, changed, and came back. She requested this be the last major scene she filmed. Just in case. The beekeeper swears she was never stung. Fact 7. The food fight was entirely improvised. 1 take. Neither actress had done it before, and neither wanted to risk a second attempt. Masterson and Parker each selected their ammunition with the prop master beforehand. Then, cameras rolled and they went at each other. No script, no blocking. Masterson said they could have showered and done it again. They chose not to. The first take had captured something that felt true. Fact 8. Mary Louise Parker got a leech attached to her leg during the swamp scene. A grip burned it off between takes. The film shot in Georgia during peak summer. Heat, humidity, insects. Parker did the swamp scene, came out of the water, and noticed something on her leg. A real leech. She described it years later in a Reddit AMA without drama. A grip burned it off with his lighter between takes. Filming continued. A musical that became a drama. An Oscar winner who thought she was failing. A stunt double who quit, and an actress who did 6 takes in a beehive. A love story that 3 women fought to show, and 1 man decided to hide. Up to here. What it cost to make the film. From here, what happened when the world saw it. Fact 9. Universal opened the film in 5 theaters. Word of mouth did the rest. On December 27, 1991, the film opened in exactly 5 theaters. 4 weeks later, it was in 673. At its widest, 1,331. It grossed $119 million against an $11 million budget, nearly 11 times the production cost. There was no social media, no viral campaign, just people leaving the theater and calling their friends. Fact 10. The production accidentally poisoned several extras. Then they hired a tomato consultant. Someone in catering used unripe red tomatoes instead of green ones. Unripe red tomatoes contain solanine, mildly toxic when undercooked. Several extras reported nausea and vomiting. Medics were called. The production hired what the crew began calling a tomato consultant, an expert whose sole job was to verify that only firm green tomatoes reached the plates. The film is called Fried Green Tomatoes. It still managed to poison people with the wrong tomatoes before anyone thought to check. Fact 11. Production designer Barbara Ling found Juliet, Georgia, with a population of around 200 and a town that was nearly dead. The film rebuilt it. The production cleaned out the kudzu, painted the buildings, and rebuilt the town. When the film became a hit, 2 locals opened the Whistle Stop Café for real in the same building. It still operates today with waits of up to 90 minutes. The building was a movie set before it was a restaurant. Fact 12. There are 2 Whistle Stop cafes. Most tourists visit the wrong one. The real cafe that inspired Flagg's novel is in Irondale, Alabama, where Flagg grew up. Her great-aunt ran a railroad cafe there. The film was shot in Georgia. Most visitors to Juliet, Georgia believe they are visiting the Whistle Stop Cafe. They are visiting a set in a state the novel never mentioned. The Irondale Cafe has operated since the 1930s and also benefited from the film's fame. The movie made both places real. Fact 13. Kathy Bates rammed the car. The scene was nearly cut. Test audiences told the studio to leave it in. The scene was considered expendable in early cuts. Test audiences disagreed. It was among the highest-rated moments in every screening. It stayed. The word Tawanda entered the vocabulary of anyone who saw the film in 1991 and never entirely left. Fact 14. Jessica Tandy and Kathy Bates were back-to-back Best Actress Oscar winners. John Avnet got both of them for $11 million. Tandy won in 1989 for Driving Miss Daisy. Bates won in 1990 for Misery, 2 consecutive Best Actress winners on the same modestly budgeted film. Both said yes. The film received 2 Oscar nominations, Tandy for Supporting Actress and the Screenplay. It won neither. Fact 15. Fanny Flagg based the character of Ninny Threadgood, the old woman who tells the stories, on her own grandmother. The stories Ninny tells are the stories Flagg's grandmother told her. The warmth, the rhythm of the telling, the sense that the past was still alive inside a very old woman, that came directly from Flagg's childhood. The film she could not make honestly was still the most personal thing she had ever written. Fact 16. At the end of the film, there is a fresh jar of honey on Ruth's grave. The card reads, "I'll always love you, the bee charmer." Only one person would leave that note. Ruth called Iggy the bee charmer after the beehive scene. The jar is fresh. Evelyn notices it when they arrive. The film implies Ninny is Iggy, that she has told Evelyn her own story in the third person all along. But Ninny says things that don't fit if she is Iggy. The film never explains. It leaves the jar and walks away. Audiences have argued about it for 33 years. The honey jar is still there.